Hi, this is Micornus Phokane, the leader and the founder of Church Governance Solutions. Today, I just want to go through what we call questions of reflections regarding credibility. And I want us to just to go through those questions today. Maybe they will help you as we were dealing with this topic that speaks about credibility development. There are some questions that you can actually ask yourself as a leader, as you reflect, because that will help you to make a decision on whether you're credible enough and you are able to develop that credibility as well. Very, very important. The first question that I want us to go through today, I'm going to just to mention that it is the question about how important is credibility to your leadership. Very, very important, because sometimes you find that you're having the leadership that may not value what we call credibility anyway. Because if credibility is not important to your leadership, and talking about yourself and the leaders that are around you, if credibility is not really important, you may not pursue it at all. You may not even need to develop it because you don't regard it as important. Why are some leaders that you believe have high credibility, or others are having low credibility? Can you think of any experience that emphasizes the importance of credibility in your leadership? Those are type of questions that you look at yourself and ask yourself, reflect on them, make sure that they become part of you, and they become questions that you forever reflecting on yourself and learn to check if you understand why you need credibility. Have you experienced the principle that of your people don't trust you for whatever reason? They would follow you. If so, what was the situation? Because sometimes you find that there are people that you have experienced your own people not wanting to follow you. And the question is, why are they not following you? What about the question of credibility? And would they follow you if you're credible enough? And those are type of questions that you would actually ask yourself to reflect. And I want you to reflect as well as a leader right where you are, because that may help you in developing your credibility. There's another question that I want to just ask for reflection. Why do you think that it is so hard for people to trust others? Why is it so hard for them to trust the leaders in particular? And those type of questions as well. Because when you start to look at that, people are hard to trust the people. So in other words, there must be a real hard work amongst leaders in order to develop credibility, to make sure that it is not a credibility factor that makes people not to trust the leaders. Because it is something that we know, that leaders are not trusted generally. And therefore the question is why? And that's the question that you should look at for reflection as well. Under good circumstances, how long will it take for people to trust in new leaders? That this amount of time square with your experience as well. So how long from your experience that you've seen people starting to trust people? How long do people in your experience trust the new leaders? And that time that you've actually experienced, will it be really the time frame that you think is a standard time frame for every type of leadership change? So those are type of questions that you should actually look at for reflection as well. So just reflect on that and ask yourself if that will be something that there's a time frame for people to trust you or not. Now, why is a leader's character so important to developing trust with followers? If you were prioritizing if you were prioritizing the 8 requirements for developing credibility, for instance, or the requirements that we spoke about, or those ingredients, if you were to look at them, does the amount of time square up with your experience? Because that's very important for you to look at that as well. Because sometimes we look at it and say character is important, but many people may not see how important character is. The question is that, have you seen it in your life where people trust you based on the character? And that's something that you need to reflect on. And how long did they take to trust people based on the character as well? If you look at the ingredients, we have spoken about the ingredients in the past. If you look at them, 8 of them as we have gone through them. And I want to emphasize the fact that does that amount of time require, square up with your experience? Does it really, is it required actually for the experience that you have, that people can trust you only and with your character at that particular time? So very, very important. What is leadership competence? Because I think it's very important for us to understand when we talk about leadership competence, that is not just a fluke word. It's not just a word that we're mentioning, but we must actually know what a leadership experience is or competence is. Have you ever attempted to follow an incompetent leader? If so, what was it like yourself? Because if you can reflect that you followed an incompetent leader in the past, how did you feel about it? Because if you feel a certain way, that's the same way that your own followers will feel if you're incompetent yourself. And that's very important that you look at and reflect on that. It will be very important for you to correct some of the things that you're experiencing in your life. Now, why is clarity of leadership, of leaders' direction important to building credibility? Have you ever attempted to follow someone who didn't know where he or she was going? If so, what happened? Because there are people that we follow, they don't seem to be having direction. Why is it important for a leader to have a direction? So that's basically the important reflection question. Because the question is, do you have a direction yourself as a leader? You might be leading a church, you might be, say, an assistant in a church. Maybe you are in the board or leadership of a church. Do you have clarity of direction yourselves? Because if you don't have clarity of direction yourselves, you're not going to be able to convince the congregation to have clarity of direction. They are looking up to you. And therefore, it's going to be very important that you yourself have clarity of direction. And when there's no clarity of direction, what happens? And whatever happens is exactly what will happen in lack of clarity in your own church as a leader. Why do people in our congregations want their leaders to communicate with them? Have you ever experienced a ministry situation where the leader didn't communicate well with their followers? If so, what happened? Because that's the point. And I want you to look at it and say, where there's no communication, what happens? Have you ever been in a church where there's no communication at all between the leader and his own congregation, a leader and his own leadership team? And if so, what happened there? And that reflective question is very important for you to look at, because that will help you as a leader to develop the communication plans and communication structures that will actually hold your church in good state, and that will make your church to stand strong, knowing that you are able to lead them with direction and with clarity. And therefore, that's very important that you look at that communication becomes very, very important as well. How important is conviction to one's leadership? What is the relationship between the leader's conviction and passion? How easy is it for you to follow leaders who are without conviction? Because that's very important, and we need to know ourselves what is the importance of conviction in a leader. And if a leader doesn't have conviction, how easy is it to follow them? And that's the reflective question as well. And I need you to look at as a church leader and reflect on it and say, if I'm not having passion, am I really inspiring anybody? Are people going to be able to hold me at the high esteem and follow me? Are people going to see me as credible if I don't have conviction and courage and passion? And that's very important that you look at that as a reflective question as well. Very, very important. Why do leaders in today's churches need courage? Has this been your experience? Why or why not? What is also the relationship between courage and strength according to you? Very, very important, because as a leader as well, we always talk about courage, and interchangeably courage and power and strength, we always interchangeably use them together. But I want to emphasize the fact that you must differentiate, and therefore you must know what courage is all about and what does it mean to be courageous. Therefore, you must be able to know what does it mean to be courageous, so that you can be courageous yourself and you can be able to do things courageously. Now, have you been with a leader or work under a leader who is not courageous enough? And how does it feel? So I want you to just to reflect on that as well, because that's very important, because it will give you a good indication that if you're not courageous enough, you must actually feel that your people may not follow you or see you as credible, because their experience, when they experience you as not courageous, they are going to see you not as credible enough, because they may be valuing courageousness as credibility ingredient, as we've mentioned it. Very, very important. And as a leader, I would love to emphasize that these reflective questions are very, very important for you as a church leader. Now, why does the leader need to care? Or why does the leader's care affect his or her leadership credibility? How? And how might leaders communicate that they care for their people? Because that's very important, because sometimes we look at it and say, the caring of the leader, how does it relate with credibility? And secondly, how do they as leaders, or how do you as a leader actually communicate your care? How do people know that you care? And that's very reflective as well. And not one size fits all. And of course, as a leader, you would actually come up with your own strategies of how you attend your people, how you take care of your people. There's also the care for the people. People don't interpret care the same way. Others don't will interpret care as being given some gifts, as being given some food stuff. But some with care is how you relate to them, how you communicate to them, and also just how you know their name and call them by name. And some just see that as care, but while some care may mean something else. So those are type of things that as a leader you should interrogate, because out of these reflective questions, it will bring some thought-provoking thoughts that will come to your mind, and you'll start working on this, and that will help you quite a bit. Were you surprised to see emotional composure as a requirement for development of credibility? If not, how does a lack of composure affect one's leadership, therefore, if you've seen that? How does lack of composure then affect someone's leadership? Have you ever attempted to work with a leader who created negative mood due to poor composure? If so, describe what is it like to have a leader who's actually poisoning the communication by not holding their emotions, by not managing their emotions. How does it feel? And that could be a reflective question as well, that might affect you or make you to fix some few things in your own life as well. Finally, how hard is it to regain lost credibility? Because I think that's a question that we must ask ourselves. If you've lost credibility, how hard is it to regain it? And that's one question that you need to ask yourself. How would you go about attempting to do this in ministry? Have you ever lost credibility? If so, did you gain it back, and how? So ask those questions and reflect on yourself. I want to end up here today. Your host, Micornus Phokane. Thank you very much for listening to us and being part of this great topic. And I believe that you've learned quite a bit out of this. You will be with us as we continue with other topics going forward. But don't forget our Facebook page, Micornus Phokane, and our Facebook page, Young Men and Empowerment Forum, and the other about church governance solutions. Like all those 3 pages, make sure that you click notification buttons on them so that you are notified when we've posted videos of this kind. Don't forget our YouTube channel, Young Men Empowerment Forum, and the other one under Micornus Phokane. So subscribe to those YouTube channels so that when we have posted material on that ground, you would learn a lot out of that. And remember that we've posted a lot of material already in advance, and some of them, they are very important for you and your church. And you shall never be the same, and your church shall never be the same again. Allow me to check out right here and say cheers for now.